Fostering connection through vulnerability, the People Pleaser podcast validates struggles, celebrates growth, and inspires positive change. Together, let's embrace authenticity, challenge patterns, and evolve with compassion. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the People Pleaser podcast. It's Corie, and I'm your host, your friend, your confidant, and we are back with another episode. And today I am going to dig into the people pleasing that goes on within the People Pleaser podcast. So there's a bit of an inception type situation going on where I'm talking about people pleasing and I am people pleasing. But before we dig into that, I wanted to give you a little bit of an update because it's something that I've been touching on quite a bit over the last few episodes, and that is my job. So for those of you who aren't completely up to speed, I'm in a new town. I got a new job, and I have been wrestling a little bit with whether or not it's a good fit. And I have been able to rationalize this job. It's not horrible, but it's also not amazing. And there are certain aspects to the job that I wish were better. But there was a part of me that was hanging on to it, not only because I just got the job and I felt that I had made a commitment and I wanted to fulfill that commitment. It's also hard to sometimes admit when things are just like sort of sucky. And I know for me, I have had the tendency to wait until things get really, really bad before I can justify leaving. So I was grappling with those aspects. And there was another piece that wondered if I was the problem. And that sort of had to do with wondering if I was being a little bit too sensitive or just reading into things a little bit more than I needed to. But the reality is I am a sensitive creature, and I'm not necessarily always looking to completely bulletproof myself and avoid all uncomfortable situations. But when it comes to things like your job where you're spending a lot of your time, it's important that that's not like perpetually uncomfortable or unpleasant. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. It wasn't horrible. It was just this like underlying feeling that it was not the best fit. And that's what's been a little bit tricky about moving to a new town, is that I don't have that like local instinct. I can't really talk to anybody who has worked at these places. Culturally, there are just like differences now that I'm in the States compared to being in Canada. And I've just been finding it quite overwhelming to actually choose a job because I just don't really know a lot about these places. And I'm kind of learning the hard way. So I decided to give my 2 weeks, and it actually wasn't because of all that I've just talked about. I mean, of course, that helped the decision, but I actually had a really great opportunity just land in my lap, and it was an easy decision because of all of that context. And so I have kind of been doing a soft launch into this new job as I wrap up my current job. So I'm doing both right now. But I think and I hope that this is a much better fit. And one of the things that I am already really excited about is that there's already this built-in sense of trust in me from the owner, and he is ready to like really invest in me. He sees my worth, he sees my potential, he sees my capacity, and he's like, you are who I chose for this. So that feels really good. Whereas in my current job, I almost feel like I'm constantly trying to prove myself. The unfortunate part of all of it is that both of my bosses at my current job are away. So giving my 2 weeks notice has been not a smooth process. They're actually both out of the country. And so I've given my notice. I've seen that through iMessage and WhatsApp, the messages have been delivered. On WhatsApp, it doesn't appear to have been read, but of course with iMessage, you can't, unless they have read receipts on. It just still says delivered. So I'm hoping they got my message, and I'm going to just keep going. So again, like as a people pleaser, this has just not been an easy, seamless, making everybody happy type of process. And like giving your notice is always, or I mean, at least in my experience, uncomfortable. It's like that kind of like, I don't hate it here. I've just found a better opportunity. But yeah, I already know that I'm thinking about it too much because I've only worked at this job for a month. So it's not the end of the world. They will survive beyond me. So what do I mean when I say I am people pleasing in the creation of the People Pleaser podcast? Well, unfortunately, there are a few layers to that. The one and most blatantly obvious example that I can share is that right now it is 8:24 p.m. on Monday night, and I am hustling to get this episode in your ears by tomorrow morning at 6. And that is just a whole lot of pressure that I am putting on myself, but I am spinning it in my head to believe that if I don't have this episode out by 6, I will be disappointing you. And I know, well, I don't know, but I know that none of you are waking up tomorrow morning at 6:01 and wondering where the hell is the newest episode of the People Pleaser podcast. Like, don't worry, I know that. However, I do still have such strong ties to like performance and upholding my word, which are good qualities, but I would say in this example, it's kind of blown out of proportion. And I have a hard time, I guess like when I say I'm going to do something, it's really important to me that I do it. But unfortunately, I go to wild extremes, and I'm not exactly kind to myself in the process. So like right now, I don't really want to be recording this. Like if I'm being honest, I mean, I'm loving it. I love my podcast. I love this platform, but energetically this evening right now, I'm tired. I worked all day. My husband and I tackled a bunch of little projects around the house. I made dinner. I did the dishes. Like I'm tired, and I wish I had the ability to be like, you know what? It's okay if the episode's a day or two late. And that is just not something I'm overly comfortable with yet. And that is, I don't know where that comes from, if I'm being honest. I think I've always held myself to a pretty high standard. And it has always been really important to me that people do what they say they're going to do, even when I'm on the receiving end. Like if someone says they're going to do something and then they don't, I do experience disappointment, I guess. And I do know that is tied to like bigger associations. I know that growing up, I didn't live in the same house as my dad. And so there were times where we would have plans to meet up and like some unforeseen circumstance would get in the way and then he would have to cancel. And I'm not saying this happened a lot, but I do remember that feeling so deeply where I was just so gutted that I couldn't see my dad and that the plans changed. And so there's there's also just this fixation a little bit on like upholding plans and keeping plans. And when I make a plan, like I see that through to the end, even if I'm, like exhausted or if there's like scheduling conflicts or whatever it may be, or if I'm just like not feeling up for it, I will keep that plan. And that's also, again, like I'm not saying this is recommended, but it's always just kind of been that way for me. Like doing what you say you're going to do, being where you say you're going to be and when. And those are things that I just find that I'm a little bit sticky on. And I don't have a ton of flexibility on the receiving end. And so then I also offer that. Those are things that I will offer you. I will be there. I won't flake out on plans. I will keep my word. So those things are pretty rigid in my thinking. So when it comes to just kind of being a little bit more carefree, a little bit more tuning into like the energy or my just my capacity, I've learned to silence those things for these sort of external offerings or these external expectations. The other area that has been coming up for me in and around people pleasing and this podcast is when I am talking about things that are happening to me. And these are things that are happening in my current life. They are real life examples involving real life people. And of course, I'm not naming names, but it doesn't take too much deductive reasoning to kind of put some pieces together and for you to kind of have an informed take on who I might be talking about or, like be able to place that. And I have left episodes feeling kind of that like sinking, guilty feeling that you get when you are talking about someone behind their back or you're gossiping. And I've also received the feedback that people really appreciate that I am talking about things so openly and that I'm not afraid to talk about the harder subjects or have the harder conversations. And I will say that I do agree. I think it's important to shed light on some of life's real shit. But I also do have these moments of like, oh my God, what if they hear that episode? And what if they think it's about them? Or, the very last thing I ever want to do, especially as a people pleaser, is hurt someone's feelings and to put a riff in between us or, somehow damage a relationship. So I think that is something to unpack further. I would hope that I could have all these conversations in person, like to the people directly. And I have in varying ways. I also think it's just really important to have a place to vent or talk things out, talk things through, problem solve. And that is seen as constructive, that is seen as helpful. And I do try to be really careful in the way that I speak about people. I'm never wanting to slander or speak ill. I'm usually trying to tie it back to my experience with that person. But I just want to be really honest. Like, I still have these moments of like, ooh, I would absolutely die if my boss heard that episode. And, I've had some of my former now former, from my job in Victoria, former coworkers listen. And, there were, I think there was one episode where I talked to my previous employer. So it was like my boss and their boss. And I remember at one point I was like, did I say anything like a little offside, or like, what if she listened? Like, what if, and like, would that be bad? Like, how would that work out for me? And I think the feedback was a little bit mixed. Like, one person was saying, I mean, I think she will listen. And, like, I don't know. And then the other feedback was like, oh no, you were fine. And I mean, I know that my husband like is all for it. He's like completely, a supporter of me just like talking things out. And I think the piece that is missing, or the piece that I'm still looking to cultivate a bit more, is, could I listen back to that and say all of that to the face of the person or the situation that I'm dealing with? So yeah, like I do try to think really critically and try to do kind of my own work before talking about different topics or different situations. I've been watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and yeah, that is not quality TV. Like, but for whatever reason, I got completely sucked in. And as I was watching it, the thing that made me like cringe or feel the most uneasy about was their level of gossiping and their level of like, or I guess just the lack of trust that they have within this friend group, and that everybody is turning to each other and talking about other people in the group. And I think that is okay as long as the intentions are well-meaning. And I guess I am trying to really nail it home that I am not trying to gossip. I'm not trying to shit talk. I'm just trying to like bring conversation to everyday struggles, realities, things that I'm still grappling with, things that I'm still figuring out, and also getting myself in a mindset where I can take action on some of these challenges. So I hope that makes sense. But I just wanted to shed light on the fact that I make these episodes and I'm still, unfortunately, at my core, a people pleaser. And there are redeeming qualities about being a people pleaser. And the fact that we do care so deeply is one of them. And I think that we never need to tune like or turn down the amount that we care for people. But what I'm learning is that there's this like shadow, this like dark side to that, in that it's at a cost of our own well-being. And so that's, again, like at its core, that is people pleasing, putting the needs of others before ours and kind of just like letting ourselves suffer silently. And that is why I wanted to just own all of this, own that these are still struggles. I have not figured it all out, but that I do care so deeply, and I am every day trying to just do a slightly better job than the day before. There is also a way that I can see all the stats of the podcast. And as much as I find that really interesting, and I think if I were wanting to build upon this and like really market myself and really like make this thing go pro, that would all matter. But I've also just really kept this podcast at a very like, I don't know, basic level. Like, I'm not really trying to monetize. I'm not really promoting it in, any type of way. And so with those intentions, it's not exactly helpful for me to keep track of the stats. Like, I mean, it's good to have a slight idea, like, okay, like some things do better than others, hitting certain like milestones in terms of listeners. And that's like worth celebrating. And I think that's really a positive way to look at the statistics. However, it has over the course of the last 6 months been a source of like, I guess insecurity would be the word, or just like judging myself or worrying about the statistics and what that means. And, heaven forbid the numbers drop or, things start to go in the downward direction. Like that still doesn't feel super easy to swallow. So that's, not a huge one. It's not something that takes up too much of my time, but it is still an aspect of putting out this podcast every week where there are people listening, and I really am just so grateful that there are people listening. And I love being able to see where everybody is tuning in from. Y'all are all over the world, and that is so wild to me that I have like dedicated listeners on most continents, and that blows my mind. And I have one really cool little just nugget, and I'll just end on this. And this is just fun, good news. And that is that I was interviewed by a writer, and this writer, she writes for the New York Times, among other places, and she is including me in one of her upcoming articles that is about people pleasing and money. And so I was able to be one of the people that she interviewed for this article. So I hope there's a way that I can share it once it's all published. I hope she represented me well. I have no doubt that she will. It was a really good conversation. So that is something kind of fun to look forward to. I'm going to end things here. I so appreciate you being here and listening and coming into this space with your open hearts. I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Once again, this is Corie with the People Pleaser Podcast. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And if you liked what you heard, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find daily content from me on both Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.